might have dozed off for a bit there. What did we do?
Really? It was fascinating. Now, I have read all about it in my books from the Muggle world. You know, they teach it in schools there too. My parents especially love to talk about civil rights movements.
Teach what? I'm confused.
They teach that to the Muggles? No wonder I had no idea what was going on. Ron, if you only paid attention. Today we learned about the women who pioneered the women's rights movement in the United States of America. The what?
Who are you talking about?
Well, the movement began with a small group of individuals speaking about the rights of women. They had not unified yet, so their message was not very strong. There were women like Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Sojourner Truth, Ida B. Stone, Alice Paul, Lucy Stone, and so many others. At first, women such as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton traveled by foot and by horse and buggy to give speeches around the United States. You mean they didn't use the Flu Network? That must have taken forever. America is huge. The Flu Network? Come on, Ron. These are Muggles we are talking about. They couldn't use magic at all. Seems downright dreadful.
This does sound familiar. I recall learning about it in primary school. Were they trying to vote or something?
Yes. The main goal was to give women the right to vote. Wait, so you mean that Muggle women in America still couldn't vote? Women in America were still considered less than citizens. They were either under the jurisdiction of their fathers or of their husbands. They couldn't own land, inherit property or goods, and could not vote.
You mean to say that women couldn't own land either? Why did their fathers or husbands control them?
It made it easier to demote women. They couldn't own land or vote. They couldn't have a say in what their government did, couldn't hold government offices, and couldn't even participate in politics in public. Women had many restrictions on what they could do or where they could go, and it all hinged on what their fathers or husbands let them do. Why, that's awful. No wonder women in America protested.
What happened then?
Well, many of the women began as part of the abolitionist movement, aiming to end slavery in the United States. They worked alongside leaders like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, who fought to end the vile practice of slavery, which had been going on in the United States for hundreds of years already. Americans had slaves? Like house elves? Sort of, except these were people, bought and sold into slavery from mostly Western Africa. They enslaved people? That's horrible. It was horrible. After the abolitionist movement was over, with laws being passed to end slavery, women saw that they also did not have the same rights as men. They rallied together, protesting, giving speeches, even getting arrested for what they believed in.
This all sounds quite dark. These women were arrested for saying they wanted equal rights.
Yes, many women attempted to vote when it was still illegal and were arrested and put in jail. Jail? Like Azkaban? Yikes.
Well, not quite. They're Muggles, remember. They don't have Dementors at their prisons, but they are still horrible.
But when exactly did this happen? Well, most of the movement began in the 1860s, but continued until women got the right to vote. Even after that, women still protested and fought for equality in the United States, and continue to do so now.
But what about the Seneca Falls Convention? When did that happen?
Wow, Harry, you remember that? The Seneca Falls Convention was the first women's rights convention held in 1848, where women came together to speak on the issues surrounding their rights. In 1848? Were there more conventions? Yes, there were many more conventions, as women and some men wanted to come together to speak on how to attain more equal rights for women. Did women ever get the right to vote?
I remember this. In 1920, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution was passed and granted women the right to vote.
Yes, that's right. Yes, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton gave Congress an amendment to grant women the right to vote in 1872. It wasn't passed until 1920, though. But we must remember that even still, not all women were treated the same. Women of color couldn't vote for many years after, even decades later. What? But what about the amendment? Women of color were still discriminated against. Many people thought they didn't deserve the vote or other rights and barred them from voting. Even today, when it is still legal for every citizen to vote in elections, the numbers for people of color who go out to vote is much lower than the rest of the population.
Wow! Thanks, Hermione. How do you remember all of this?
Well, I certainly don't fall asleep in class.